This could be the Warhammer type game that parents and children alike have been waiting for. I randomly reached out to the Rubicon Overdrive team and asked for a free box set in exchange for an unbiased review, so here's that video. In the process, I also got to meet the creators of the game, so you'll hear from them in just a little bit. Everything you need to get started comes neatly packed inside this box, but don't take it from me, here is what Eliza, Rowan and Levi have to say.
Rubicon Overdrive is a tabletop role-playing game that combines elements of storytelling, hobby, and gameplay all in one immersive kind of experience. So you're going to collect these different miniatures, you're going to make characters out of them, and then bring them to life on the game.
So I'm Eliza, I'm a mum, I'm a former primary school teacher. My son really got into playing Warhammer, not so much playing, but really enjoying painting the figures. And I thought, someone should do this where the game is actually a little bit easier and more accessible for children, and that the story is not quite so dark.
My parent and my parents' business partner and me have made this game, and I think you will like it because it's like Warhammer, but it's like Warhammer for kids. So if your parents don't really like all the gore and blood, I mean, like blood angels drink the blood of their enemies.
And I thought it was really important that kids kind of had a game that was as important as Warhammer was to me when I was a kid. And I feel like the game's kind of moved on, where just based on how expensive it is and how complicated it's kind of got, it's not really for kids anymore.
And just these guys, it's like romance-free, no like blood and gore. And then we have like all of these miniatures, which are just like, there's all these mysteries. And we also have like animals as well.
We've brought our kids through a pandemic. There's lots of concern about children being on screens a lot of the time, social media, what childhood looks like. And I think tabletop role-playing games are really good for connection. They're also really good for concentration. They're creative. You get involved in storytelling. So they're just fundamentally like a really positive thing that you'd want your child to do.
So right now what we're doing is we're creating Rubicon Overdrive as a series of connected episodes. So episode 1 has been available for a little while now. Episode 2 is just coming out right now, probably out by the time this video comes out. And the idea is that each episode will introduce new characters, new elements of the story, and new rules. So you're kind of almost like building up the game as you collect each episode. So you'll learn more and more as you kind of go, and you'll open up lots of more opportunities for you to create your own stories in the game as you collect more episodes.
So, I hope you enjoyed that, but let's get to the review. Each box set comes with a 70-page storybook written by Eliza, where you'll find a few illustrations drawn by her as well. It's a very digestible book, a simple story that sets the tone, and more importantly, the very story you will be playing. There is a small how to paint page with painting tips, the main paints used, and the brush, 2 miniatures of the main character, Ceci Marcello, terrain sheets, and the start of the rulebook. It's important to note that the rules will be expanding over time, so these cover the very basics. You'll also find some red tokens to be used as health markers, 2 D10 dice, a ruler, primer, which comes with instructions, although we'll see later on I wasn't really a fan of it, a few bases with attachments for character cards and items. The rest of the cards are related to the locations, game objectives, character stats, and item descriptions. This whole box is currently priced at £19.99, which I think is a very fair price, considering everything you get in there. You may have noticed that the box has some 3D printed elements and it's manually put together, but I don't think that really takes away from the value of it. Everything is nicely printed and definitely feels kind of robust. Unfortunately, some of the current artwork has been created using generative AI, which I know a lot of you won't be a fan of. I'm not either. As you may understand, the team is currently quite small, so this is a way of cutting on certain expenses, like paying real artists. The storybook is written by Eliza and has illustrations made by her as well. Rowan is the mastermind behind all the gameplay elements, and he's currently learning 3D sculpting. As well, the sculpts that come in box 1 are made by a real human being. I'm not a fan of GenAI, and it bothers me that I can't tell what is human-made and what is not. So it kind of took me away from the gameplay at times. Like, you can tell that some of the logos are like different proportions and the lighting is kind of off in all of them. Yeah, there's just certain things that you would think that a human being wouldn't really design like that. Same thing about the artwork. Honestly, at first I thought it was human-made, but then I asked about it. Even though you can argue that kids don't really care what's GenAI and what's not, I think it's important to even teach them that, what people make themselves is kind of valuable. We don't really want to live in a world where everything is made by machines. And also part of the game itself is painting, for example, which is a creative hobby. So I think it's important to encourage, children or adults to just use their own imagination and value when people do so as well. I do want to say that these creators have good intentions with the game that they're making. They aren't just trying to profit off of everything made by AI. However, again, please in the future try to hire some more artists. Creating plastic molds is really expensive, up to tens of thousands of pounds. So obviously this wasn't going to be an option for them. So really we need to be thankful for 3D printing. I didn't really find any major issues with the prints or even the sculpts themselves. Yes, there were some supports left over that I had to clean up, but nothing major. These are 50mm in size, which if you're used to Warhammer, can feel a bit strange to paint initially. Here are some comparisons to other miniatures that you might be more familiar with. Eventually I did get used to painting on the bigger size, and it is a good size for kids to get used to it. As Rowan explained to me, the point is to have a smaller amount of miniatures that play a major role in the story, as opposed to having dozens and dozens of miniatures and the odd main character that will definitely be more expensive and more overwhelming over time. With that said, I still think the torso and legs are a bit too long compared to the head on the Ceci Marcello sculpt. It leaves a lot of empty space or space with no details or little transitions, which I found hard to paint, or at least make more interesting. I won't go too hard into the design here since Rowan is now sculpting the minis moving forward, and I was fortunate to get a sneak peek of Levi from episode 2. The new minis already look a lot more dynamic, so definitely a big step up from the ones in box 1. By the way, Rowan has just started learning 3D sculpting in the last 6 months, and already this is what he is making, so I think he's doing a great job. I did intend to use the paints and the brush that comes with the box to paint at least one of the miniatures, but because I am used to, a little bit higher quality paints and brushes, I found it a bit difficult and I wasn't really enjoying myself. I also tried the primer, which I don't know why, it just didn't cover very well, and I don't know if I was using it wrong. I never used this type of primer before. In the end, I just decided to use a Vallejo black primer, which I airbrushed, and did a bit of a zenithal as well. I don't really think that the quality of these paints and the brush really matters in this case. Obviously, you can get your own. You probably already own some. If you're a parent that's into the hobby already, you might be using the ones you already have. So yeah, it's good for someone that's starting out. I don't think it's a huge negative if the quality of them is not amazing. I started by painting the skin with dark flesh tone, and then filling out the highlights with mixes of dark flesh tone and ice yellow. Usually I'm not a fan of painting faces, but I actually did enjoy doing this one, even though you'll see I made quite a few mistakes that I had to fix later on. I glazed a bit of red all over the skin to give it some more life, adding a bit more of the red over the cheeks. I also painted some beautiful pink lips by using a combination of all the paints on the palette. When doing eyes, I like to start with a base of dark tan, and then I can paint the eyes with straight up black, which, it could have gone better the first time around. But with a little bit of perseverance, Ceci's face was complete. Onto the black hair, I started off with a very dark gray, which I could then make dark and lighter depending on where the light was hitting. Tried to make the most of the zenithal priming by adding a wash over the top of the uniform, but this was too transparent. A contrast paint would have worked a lot better. While I waited for that to dry, I started adding a few bits to the base, including 2 different types of cable ties, one that I clipped a few times so it would look more damaged, and a skull from a Warhammer basing box surrounded by a pool of sprue goo. Back to the uniform, I wanted to try a speed paint, which I knew would stain the area a lot more. As I started adding it, the Pro Acryl wash started coming off in bits, so I had to give Ceci a bath to get all the wash and speed paint gunk off. This isn't the first time I've had issues with Pro Acryl washes behaving like this, so I'll definitely steer away from them in the future. Back to the drawing board, I painted the uniform in black and tried to wet blend a few bits with dark gray where I wanted the highlights to start showing off. And of course, I ruined the face in the middle of this. The sculpt is quite flat and there aren't many folds to work through and highlight, but I did what I could. Edge highlighting will also help to read the surfaces better. I did enjoy painting the minis. Even though most of the color scheme is quite monotone, you can get creative with some of the glow effects, and to be honest, I could have pushed the OSL a bit more. I even allowed myself to play around with the base again on the mini with the helmet, and I think I even did a better job the second time around, but you guys let me know what you think. With the painting done, I then made the terrain, which is quite simple but also quite fun. I think the cutting and bending of paper is a great idea. It doesn't take too long and it's nice to have different pieces for each scene, so you can really play around with it and mix and match if you want. I know the team has commissioned 3D printable terrain, however, this is a lot more expensive to make, takes more time to paint. I think it's definitely better to keep it simple, even encourage parents and kids to make their own terrain from cardboard boxes, cereal boxes, or even Legos, whatever they have lying around the house. Plus, if you do want to get the cool printable pieces, I'm sure you'll be able to purchase these as an add-on feature in the future. Everything we've done so far has been leading up to this moment. Playing. It was quite easy to read the rules and understand them since they have elements from games I've played before, like Dungeons & Dragons for example. I spent a couple of hours playing the scenes out on my own. I probably would have had more fun playing in a team setting, but I still enjoyed myself. The main things you need to know is that every scene has a different objective, so you will not be bored by doing the same thing over and over. If you're playing a human character, they have 2 actions every turn, and you can take the same action in a row, for example, attacking twice. All you have to do is roll your d10, see if you rolled 5 or higher in this case. If so, the enemy has a reaction roll, and if they rolled more than the reaction roll, they don't get hit. If they do get hit, they get a little red token for damage. I'm not one for very complex rules, so this felt like a great starting point. Obviously, different characters will have different abilities and skills, and depending on the objective, you might have to interact with different types of objects and make other types of rolls. I found it to be a very adaptable game, which is great, and the difficulty will change according to how many people are playing. When I spoke to Rowan, I did mention it kind of felt like D&D battles at times, and I wanted to know how my character could interact with the environment and objects in more creative ways. Really, you can leave things up to the imagination, as role-playing games should. There is also a persona called the Storyteller, which I can compare to the Game Master in other games. The Storyteller is supposed to be more well-versed in the rules and able to dictate what certain players can and can't do. Again, you don't need a storyteller to be able to play this game, and I really do love that you can make it as easy or complex as you want it. A lot more playtesting is needed, but I didn't encounter any major red flags when I played, especially when it comes to the combat. I sometimes won, sometimes didn't. My favorite rule is that each scene takes only 10 turns, and that makes it so that the game does not go on forever, and every single turn is a lot more purposeful. If you've gotten to this part of the video, thank you for watching. It's definitely been a really big undertaking for me to make it, and I really do try to be unbiased in my reviews. However, I do feel sometimes connected to certain things and excited, so I hope you don't think I'm trying to sell this to you and that I have something to gain from it. I just genuinely do like this game and I like what the creators are trying to do. Also, I do know there's a lot of elements that are not in their final format, but it's kind of nice that we are here at this phase with episode 1 and episode 2 coming out now, and we can kind of just enjoy the ride as the creators, improve these things and make changes. And if you do have any feedback for Eliza or Rowan, please do leave it in the comments, or you can contact them with any relevant links that I'm leaving in the description. I know that games such as Warhammer that are very, very well known have made a huge positive impact in people's lives. Warhammer can be very, very gory, very complex, and quite expensive. So Rubicon Overdrive is giving us some solutions. I do think this game could make a really positive difference and help kids to discover a love for either board games or role-playing, sci-fi, painting. It does have that many components that it will strike a chord with most children, I believe, and get them to use their brains in creative and fun ways. I also want to thank Eliza, Rowan, and Levi. It was really nice to meet them and getting to play this game and paint the characters. I'm already excited for episode 2. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and give us a comment below. I'm Mars, this is Roll for Paint, and I'll see you in the next one.
So people ask, What is Rubicon Overdrive? Rubicon Overdrive is a technology that's changed fundamentally the universe in which our story takes place. Beyond that, it's a bit of a mystery.
We have this amazing game, and if you could buy a box, buy a t-shirt, help us.